What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Vitamin Lead, your healthy dose of leadership. I'm your host, TJ Reed, and I am so excited today to have my friend Chris Tabish here with us. Chris, welcome to Vitamin Lead.
Thanks, TJ. So great to be here. And good morning and Happy New Year.
Yeah, same to you. So, Chris, we've shared a little bit of your bio, but why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? What's exciting in your world these days?
Yeah, what's exciting is, I think first and foremost, being able to talk about comediology. It's for so long, I've been weaving, I've been in business, but being able to weave in comediology and have it be a part of business. I mean, been doing stand-up for about 10 years, and stand-up is such how does that relate to business exactly? And so finding the ways that it actually relates and being able to talk about that is a pretty joyful thing. I really love doing that and watching the reaction on people and being able to spread that. Very cool.
I got to tell you, Chris, I loved reading the book Comediology. I just finished it, and there were times, I think I was sharing with you earlier, that I'd be sitting in bed at night reading on my Kindle and would try not to laugh too hard with some of your quick wit and the funny things that you said in there. I didn't want to wake up my wife with that, so I really enjoyed the book.
Well, I appreciate you reading. I mean, my mom hasn't even read the book, so this is a big win for me, TJ.
All right. Well, that's exciting. Chris, one of our favorite questions we usually like to start out interviews with all the folks we interview is, what was one of your first jobs and maybe a lesson that you learned that you've kind of carried through to this day? Because the reason I ask that is we have a lot of folks that are like newer in their careers or like just stepping into leadership. And so I love hearing some lessons there.
Okay. Well, my very first job, I don't know how applicable it's going to be to this leadership forum, but was actually wiping the trays off Burger King clean. And my lesson from that is the Whopper is a very messy sandwich. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And I guess the lesson that I did learn is you gotta love what you do. It doesn't need to be spectacular. It doesn't need to be you don't need to be rich or famous, but you gotta love what you do. And there are jobs that I had, and I'll be I bus tables. I actually enjoyed bussing tables, but I didn't enjoy wiping the Whopper mess off into the garbage. And so, it's small as that seems, and it sounds like the same thing, but for me, it wasn't. And you gotta love what you do.
That's such a good lesson. I hate wiping my own mess off of the tray when I'm trying to dump it.
I'll tell you, me wiping my messes off the house is one of the toughest jobs my wife does. And I'll tell you something. No.
So, as I was reading your book, I mean, you were just talking about like loving what you do and finding joy and purpose and stuff. I loved learning like some of the steps you took in like stand-up comedy and stuff like that when you were working at your job. The first question I have is just kind of like, is it hard to choose joy and purpose in Silicon Valley?
Well, I think the first point that you made is you have to choose joy inherently in that question. And I think you're spot on, TJ. I think there's a lot of lessons in the book. One of the lessons that really is coming to mind that really helped me is so often when we're in a career, whether it be in Silicon Valley or anywhere else, there's so much pressure on ourselves, isn't there? We have to succeed. We're doing this presentation, we're leading it. We might not know a lot about it. It might be the first time we're doing that, but we need to succeed. And so there's so much pressure, and when things don't go well, we look at ourselves and say, "Oh, I'm a loser. I'm horrible. People are going to see me as a hack and a fraud," and kind of the mindset that I went when I published the book, anyway. And so, that's what we do. And so, we take things so personal. What stand up, and I talk a little bit about this in the book, is it helps us to realize is that when I was doing stand up, the first few times I was horrible. And then it got to the point where it's like, wait a second, this isn't about me. I'm separate from my material. Once you get over, I'm a horrible person, and you say, okay, well, what is it? It isn't about me. What is it about the material that I can change? Because once you get there, then you can fix it. Then you can make it better. Oh, well, maybe I'll do the intro different, or maybe I'll do it from a different perspective. That's when you can start bringing joy in a big, let me say, it's a choice to bring joy, but that's a big enabler to bringing joy, is realizing that you are this amazing entity in the universe.
Hmm.
And you can weave in and out of material, and it isn't about you. It's about you trying new things and changing that mindset to you're a failure because you've brought something else versus you've succeeded because you've tried and you're going to try again. And it's like, wow, what a difference that makes in terms of attitude, in terms of being able to step up to the plate.
Yeah, that's so good, because it's got to be the language that we use, right? That makes us feel that way. I was talking to a friend recently, and they said something like, in the Spanish language, it's not "I am hungry," but it's "I have hunger." And so I wonder if that could change as well with the way we view ourselves and our failures or whatever it is. Like I have this, but this is what I am, and that might help with some of the way that we kind of connect the dots there.
Yeah, I actually, it's a good point you're making. There's and I've talked about this a little bit in my presentations. So Deepak Chopra did this meditation in a very large meeting, and it was an audacious move, I thought, but I had a lot of respect for it. So he said, okay, so you say, he said he had everybody say their name. He said, I am, say your name, and then say what you do for a living. So you'd have like, I am TJ, and I, have a podcast, and I have leadership. I run a leadership business. And he said, okay, now let's say that a few times. Now just say, I am TJ. So you'd say that a few times. I'm TJ, I'm TJ. And then he said, now just, I am. I am. And it's like, wow, you start to just feel that, just that levity, and just that, hey, I'm not weighed down by these other things, these expectations. I'm not typecast. I can do whatever I want to do. And there's so much power to that.
That's good. It's like we clutter our lives with all these things the same way we do with our possessions. We clutter it with titles or ways that we think about ourselves.
Yeah. And then you look around and because you have these typecasts, and no wonder people stay put where they are, because you look around and it's a mirror of a lot of times what you say to yourself. And if you say to yourself that I'm a failing banker, well, then everything that you see, everything that is, and the conversations that you have get echoed back to you, and versus I am, and I've tried something and it doesn't work great, I'm going to try something else. So, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about bringing the joy to work, right? Like we often feel like we have to wait for situations or people to change our situation, but obviously this is one of the keys, is your mindset there. But what are some other ways we can bring joy to our work on a regular basis?
Yeah, I think I find joy personally through human connection, and part of that is just bringing the joy. Is not you don't get much human connection by that just doesn't tend to do it for people. And so coming in, and I think being able to connect through humility and being able to connect through self-awareness, I think that, when people, my observation is that when people see you, so TJ, we're doing a webcast right now. I'm looking at you. You look like a very competent, smart individual. Just right off the bat, just my blink on you, that's what I would take away. And so, like it or not, you could come across as a threat, right? If we're in business, like, oh, TJ's really smart. Look at the way he's got his collar buttoned. I don't even, whatever. I mean, it's just how you could come across. And so letting people know. And so I think a lot of times we aim to prove that in business. Well, I'm smart and I could carry a 4, it's just, instead of saying, hey, on the way to work today, oh my gosh, I spilled my coffee and then I put cream in the cup. Like what was I thinking? And so letting people see that humanity within you is an open door for human connection. When you connect with somebody, for me, inherently that brings joy. They're going to be rooting for me. And in fact, it is proven that people who are more open and more joyful and humble, their teammates actually will do anything they can to find the competence within them to help them succeed. Versus if they're like, cutthroat sort of, hey, I'm the best and you can't even, it's like, we're not going to do everything we can for you. And so
this guy's finding a jackass. I don't want to help him.
Exactly. So yeah, I think that's a big part of it, is finding that connection, being humble, being present, just, not thinking about how many times in work are we not even engaging with the person in front of us because we're thinking about the deliverable next Tuesday. But just those basic fundamental things that open up for human connection, for me, at least in my experience and what I've read in studies, is just has a big amount of impact on your joy at work and your effectiveness at work.
Yeah, it's so simple. It's like sometimes we would rather put a new program in place or something to make people feel connected rather than, if you're a leader, just walking around and talking to people, asking them what's going on in their life and sharing some of your life with them, right?
Yeah, it is. We definitely overcomplicate it. It's like, no, you need to register on the form before we have a conversation. And we actually, I've seen this before where companies have done what they call unplugged. I think it's kind of like the analogous to a musical unplugged. And it's amazing the difference versus how much time and effort they put into these all hands meetings with, fireworks and slideshows and very sheeny presentations, and just talk to me. I know you're
Yeah.
not perfect, and the more that you let on that you're not perfect, and one, it's joyful because we're connecting. Two, you probably do get a laugh about it, and laughing inherently helps productivity. It's proven to help productivity. It lifts endorphins. It puts us in a better mood. It just, but you're right. We've lost the plot.
Yeah. I like how you said in the book, you said, I want to get it right here. You said, clearly comedy is a great thing for our wellness and mental health, but we often only seek and embrace it when we leave the office. So when I read that, my thought was, okay, I agree with you. Like, I want more comedy. I want more laughter in my life when I'm at the office. But how do you bring comediology or comedy into the office without being like the office clown that doesn't get respected in the midst of that?
Yeah. It's, I actually, I think you have to be obviously careful with comedy. I think first and foremost, it's self-aware, humble sense of comedy. I don't think you can go, and just like famous comedians, I mean, we've all seen the comedians that, tend to, hey, I'm going to poke you in the eye, and that's funny. And that lasts for a while, but
Right.
typically those aren't the long lasting comedians. And I always use the example of Robin Williams, very humble, now he might joke with you, but obviously it's in jest, and he'll say, no, I'm just kidding. It's, but you could just see Robin's heart. I mean, you could just like, that guy was just sincerity in a bottle.
Yeah.
I think if you're going to bring comedy, it is that. I mean, I'll just give you a quick example. What I had a really big meeting one time, and I was under the table because my laptop wasn't plugged in. I couldn't get things connected. And I think, a manager at a time, and the CIO was in the meeting, and all of his directs. And I popped my head up, and they're looking at me, and I'm like, I'm really glad you could all see me at the height of the pivotal moment of my career. And they laughed, and they actually were on my side. They were after that, they were like, oh, what we can do, you're versus if I got defensive, like, we'll start in 5 minutes, grab a donut. It's just it lets people in to help you. And so I think being careful to use comedy, but using it in a way that directs it where you're not necessarily a clown, you're calling it the way that it is.
Yeah.
I think the analogy between business and comedy is that they both aim for truth. They're both truth. The way that comedy is funny is if you're telling the truth. And in business, of course, we don't want people to lie to us. When people are shady or anything other than honest, we know it and we feel it in our bones. We want truth. And so bringing those two together, not ignoring a situation, calling it like it is, but doing it in a way that's respectful and humble, I think is a winning combination that gets people rooting for you on your side.
Yeah. I heard Larry King say one time that like he was freezing up when he first got into the interview business, and the minute that he just acknowledged the truth of like, I am sweating bullets here as I'm going to do that, he said that was the turning point for him, that he realized that that's what connected him to people and helped them to root for him and all of that.
Yeah, it's great, TJ. It's a great example. In fact, I've seen that a lot in comedy. People will will tell this joke that they, in their mind and in the shower and with their friends, worked great, and they'll be up on stage and they'll tell it, and then nobody will laugh. And I've seen the ones where they just like, okay, move on to the next joke, versus the ones like you were like, well, that worked in the shower. And people laugh and they think it's funny, and they're on their side, even though the joke wasn't good. And because if you take it back a notch, one of the things that I love about comedy is it has really taught me the why. And for me, like I said, the why is connecting with people. It's not just getting up there and telling jokes. And it's the same way in, so that person's why was, hey, I want to be real with people and want to connect with people. Well, that was a connector, even though the joke didn't work. And it's the same thing in business. If you can, a lot of times we're given a task by our superiors or by our stakeholders, which may or may not be the right thing, or may not be what we intended. Maybe they miscommunicated, maybe we misinterpreted. But if your why is about doing good for others, helping others, people will see through that and they will pull you to the other side and help you as much as they can, even if your joke might be misdirected.
I think there's a good story in your book. If you wouldn't mind sharing it, I love the story where you had, you talked about Rufus pitching to the venture capitalists and how he was straightforward about the 7 things that either, like, I can't remember what it was, like you're not going to get out of investing in my company or something like that.
Oh yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. So, so Rufus was he was an entrepreneur, and he'd been, like any entrepreneur, been cash strapped and, not a lot of money in the bank, and had employees, needed to make payroll. And so you can imagine how stressful that is for a startup owner. And all of a sudden he had people knocking at the door saying, hey, we want to buy your company, Rufus. We're interested. And so just how many of us, at least I, before reading that example, was just like, if I were putting a presentation together, I'd be like, well, this is the revenue, and this is how well we're doing. And what Rufus did was completely opposite. He, as you said, TJ, he put a slide up there that said the top 5 reasons not to buy my company. And so, and you think about that, you're like, are you kidding me? But it had, obviously, I'm assuming it got a laugh, and it got people like, wow, he's being honest. We're seeing truth from him. Yeah. And clearly he doesn't want to misguide us. And so we're going to be on his side. And so he actually sold his company as a result of that meeting. And it was an online magazine. For you millennials, a magazine was a paper product that we, so you can Google it. He sold his company Babbel to Disney for $16 million. Wow. Pretty amazing story.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Another quote from your book that I really appreciated was, you said, you convey your thoughts through your words. However, you convey feelings through everything else: your eyes, your voice, your posture, your hand movement. And so you talk about feeling being just as important as thinking in business. Can you expand a little bit more on that?
Yeah, it's, this is where I think being on the comedy stage has helped translate how much things that I wasn't aware of, things that I hadn't previously been aware of, have come across in business. And so in business, I used to think, well, it's all about my PowerPoint presentation on Friday. Nobody keeps track until I'm in the meeting on Friday presenting and how many bullet points I make, and that's how I get paid. But then being up on stage, it's walking to the club, saying hi to people around the club, shaking people's hands. It not only changes the energy for me, but it changes the energy for them. When I'm up on stage, what I'm thinking about, because as a comedian, I've tried different things. I've tried, hey, I'm going to, make fun of the first row. And I'm telling you that it is like magic. They like, I know it's coming, Mr. Comedian with a bad intent. And they get defensive and they don't laugh. And it's like, oh, this is so awkward. Versus if you get up there and you just say, I just want to have fun and I want to connect with people, and you're looking around at the people, you can actually see, if you go to an airport, or it's a real fun exercise just to see who has joy in their eyes and who is approachable. You can see when you meet people, if you really pay attention. And so it's not just in that moment, although it's very impactful in that moment, but it's everything around you. Everything that you do has, if you're paying attention, has a ripple effect into other people's minds, into our actions. And so yeah, I realized it on the comedy stage, but then being able to translate that into the business. So not thinking about it as just the Friday presentation, and how do you interact with the person that you're meeting's administrative assistant? How do you act in an email? What do you say to, how's their day going? How, every possible thing has an impact. And so thinking about what you're going to project, just like how every time I get on stage, I'm like, I want to connect with people and bring joy. What are you connecting when you bring to the office? What is that? What is your intention? Because it definitely comes across. And I'll keep talking now. Stop talking now. Sorry for the long-winded answer.
No, you're good. You're good. That's great. So do you find that when you're bringing that to a place that you kind of get that reflected back to you by a lot of people, even by people that maybe seemed grumpy from the start?
Yeah, the very first time that I did bring it, because I was, as you know from the book, I had probably failed being a comedian for, it was a long time. I mean, I can't remember who was president during those periods. And I decided to I'm going to bring the joy. I'm going to have fun, and I'm going to connect with people. And I had used the exact same material that I had used previously that didn't get a laugh. But I used that material. The first joke went over well. The second joke, I completely forgot messed up the punchline. And I was like, oh, the same thing. Like, oh, that worked well when I said it to my grandma. And people laughed. They were on my side. So yes, it definitely, there are going to be people who are lost in their own world regardless. That's going to be a constant throughout. But sure, the majority, I think, is open to, it's like in nature, there's something called the albedo rate. And the albedo rate is how much sun is absorbed. So like grass absorbs more sun than water. Water reflects more. I think everybody has their own albedo rate, if you will. And the same thing in a comedy club. But I think more often than not, people are definitely open to what you are projecting. And more often than not, people will reciprocate.
That's really good. I know one of the things you talked about in the book was making the change where you were hoping that the other comedians would bomb so that you could come in and save the day.
Oh, you got to bring that up, TJ.
Hey, I think we all have it within us that there's a little bit. I think to be a leader of any kind, you got to have a little bit of megalomania that needs to be tamed and reminded that you're not the savior of the world. But you said what switched for you was you began to really root for them because people are a lot more likely to laugh at the next person if the person before them does well. Can you talk about that both in comedy and in business?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a saying, and I use this in the book, that in a strong wind, even the turkeys fly. And I think, so my job as a comedian and in business is to get that wind going. I mean, it became abundantly clear to me in comedy. You're right. I would go there and I would, if they're funnier than me, then I'm a loser. And I'm going up against comedians who have been on Comedy Central. There's no way I was going to be funnier than them my first 50 times out. Okay, 60, 75 top. Okay. But that didn't stop me from like, I have to be funnier. And then I wouldn't laugh at them. A lot of times I was, and I would see them not connecting with their audience. Once I decided to bring the joy, I thought, you know what, everybody, I want to bring the joy to everybody, and not a cliche thing, but really I want to connect with people. That's what brings me joy. Once you realize that about yourself, you kind of seek to go get it. So seeking to go get it, I would sit on the first row and I would laugh and smile because, there's always, even if a joke bombs, there's still joy in the joke and still fun watching it. Well, they would connect with me a lot of times, the comedian. They would laugh. The other audience members would laugh because I was laughing, and it becomes contagious. All of a sudden, the comedian has their confidence back. Yeah. And then when I'm up on stage, because the audience is warm, they're much more apt to laugh. And I would get a great set. And likewise in business, said the same thing. I would like, Jane has a good deliverable. She's, and be competing against Jane when it's like, Jane and everybody else is different than me. I bring something to the table that is completely different. We might even have the same job title. Well, let's say we're both project managers, but Jane's really good at change management. I'm really good at technology. There's an area, if you look deep enough, where we are differentiated. And we live in this world, I think a lot of times, where we're trying to compete with each other. And all competing does is make me maybe as good as Jane sometimes, but probably not most of the time. And so
Yeah.
if I just really focus on what I bring to the table and encourage Jane, boy, we're going to be a powerful team. She's going to come in and she's going to help the team with change management. I'm going to come in and help the team with technology. We're going to hit it out of the park. Versus if it's like, oh, Jane did something that, she wrote a training course. Well, I better write a training course. Well, I'm not going to be as good as the training course, but my intention is just to be better than Jane. We've lost, think of how many hours of productivity we've lost, not to mention our relationship with Jane and myself, not to mention the awkwardness of the customer sees us. If you make that difference, and I don't think environments change on themselves. I don't think I could have walked in and said, hey, everybody, we need to be collaborative and you need to support me. They would have been like, really? Really? I would have been,
right.
Throw Chris under the bus. But I think if you start that, people will see that. The other comedians saw that I was supporting them. The other comedians in turn supported me. Likewise at work. If like, hey, you've got something special and different and it works well with my special and different. Let's see how we can bring this to market. Then I think that's how you transform a culture.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good because, yeah, I think for myself, I get competitive when I'm unclear, or maybe like I'm emerging into like a new season or something like that, where gifts are developing or something in me. That's when I can tend to get competitive or petty or something like that if I'm not careful. And the best thing you can do at those points is to cheer on the other people and see the value that they bring and what you can add to the conversation.
Yeah. And I think it's like we talked about, TJ, it's a really good point. And when we were talking before, it's some people like, and I connect this because I'm weird to animal periods of pregnancy. Can I say this on the podcast? I'm really sorry about that.
I love it. Animal pregnancy. Let's bring it. This was really good. So those of you listening, listen up because this is a really good point here.
This is the one good point I'm having. So I really appreciate it. So like elephants, I think take 2 years to have to their pregnancy comes to full term. And I think if you look at an elephant, they're a very sophisticated animal, the way that they care for their young, the way that they're family unit versus a gnat fly. I don't know how long the ingestion period, but I guarantee it's not 2 years. Looking at the gnat fly, I can pretty much guarantee that, but it just takes a while to develop. And likewise, I think in careers, some people have careers that don't take that. It's more learn on the job. Some people are learning something. It takes a while, and because it's more complexity. It's not better or worse or no judgment, but it takes more baking time, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think in a situation, the way that I look at that when I don't have something to offer, okay, I'm baking, and pretty soon I'm going to be able to deliver something that's just as valuable as the person who's talking now, but it just takes more understanding of the complexity before I can deliver.
That's good. Got to be quiet more, I guess, in those seasons.
We're incubating.
Yeah,
it takes time.
That would get a laugh, I'm sure. I'm just sitting over here incubating everybody. So 2 more questions for you, Chris. One, I was looking at your consulting page, and one of the things that I love that you wrote as one of kind of the values that your consulting group brings is that you guys bring connections as a catalyst for change in business. And it's really like trying to get past the silos we develop. And so my question for you is, why do you think it's so hard for us a lot of times to see outside of our silo and really connect with other people?
Boy, that's a good question, TJ. I think a lot of times as it's so easy, and this is going to sound so abundantly obvious, but it's so easy to see the world through our eyes because it's like a movie, right? I mean, I look at the movie Superman and I think, okay, here's a superhero who's saving people, and that's all he cares about is saving people. Yet in every movie, you find some like, hey, why didn't Superman save me at the fair? I was overcharged $2. You're like, he was busy, but it doesn't matter. I mean, and I think if that guy can't do it, then we don't have a snowball's chance in hell of making people see things through our eyes. And so I think people a lot of times assume the worst. And so when you're in a situation and you experience hardship, people assume the worst on, oh, they did it with intention. And so I think, again, getting back to showing humanity, showing that I'm human and things happen to me. And then it's like, oh, I know TJ, he wouldn't do that. That's when,
right.
Like it or not, the human animal, that's when I find people start to see give you the benefit of the doubt, when they see that person underneath. And I think that's it more and more when we see things in a self-centric manner, we're not able to see others' humanity. Or once, I think when you show, you also see, is when you start to believe in your own headlines. And I hate to say it, but our own headlines are very skewed. I mean, you think CNN versus Fox is bad? It's upstairs. And so getting that flavor of, like I said, humanity across the board is what will break us out of silos.
That's good. Okay, Chris, here's my last question, and then we'll give you the chance to share a little bit about where they can connect with you and stuff. But here at Vitamin Lead, our tagline is your healthy dose of leadership. And so my question to you is, how do you define healthy leadership?
I define healthy leadership very simply as human leadership. And I know that is a generic statement, but again, along the same lines that we talked about, being present, being authentic, being humble, being compassionate, and really making an effort to show your human side. I think you can naturally, you don't even need to quote unquote lead people. I think if you show your human side and show people what's on the table and the options and what you recommend, it kind of naturally flows. So I think human leadership, to put a term to it.
I love it. And I think that traces through everything that you've been sharing with us today about being human with people. So that's good.
Thanks, DJ.
Okay. So Chris, how can our listeners connect with you? Where can they get Comediology? I highly recommend this to our listeners to pick up this book.
Oh, thank you, TJ. Absolutely. So you can get it's on Amazon. It's on Audible. You can find it at comediology.com. I know that's a wordful, but just take comedy and ology. Okay, never mind. You can find me.
We'll put it in the show notes so that it's a little bit easier for them to click.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. And of course, consultingventurewestgroup.com.
Wonderful. Well, Chris, thank you. Thank you for writing this book. It's been an inspiration and an excitement for me here in 2020 so far. And thank you for being a part of the podcast. It was great to hear from you today.
TJ, such a joy being with you, and Happy New Year, my friend.
Same to you. Talk with you soon.
Okay. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.